Well, get inside the Red Zone again tomorrow night, a special Wednesday night version of the show because this is Thanksgiving week. 2-hour version hosted by Andre Knott. Talk about the Browns' victory over Philadelphia and the upcoming game against Jacksonville. That's tomorrow at 8 o'clock here on Sports Time Ohio and streaming on Fox Sports Go. J.P. Shadrick is joining us. He is entering his 9th season with the Jacksonville Jaguars, senior reporter, radio and digital host for the Jaguars. Actually covers college football as well, and I'm going to ask him about that. J.P., how you doing? Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, Bruce. It's good to be with you, and we're hanging in there. 1-9's not easy, but we're doing the best we can down here.
The first thing I got to ask you, what in heaven's name happened to that great, promising team you had in 2017 that beat Pittsburgh, gave New England all you wanted, should have won the game, and represented the AFC in the Super Bowl? What happened to that team?
Life comes at you fast, Bruce. I'll say that. 2017, they did everything that you had just mentioned there with a veteran team. They went out in free agency before that and paid a lot of money to big names like Calais Campbell and Malik Jackson. A.J. Boye was part of that team, right? Well, when that, a few years down the line, the money comes due, you're trying to trim some salary, things aren't going so well. Life changes in a hurry. So those guys are all gone now over the last couple of years. The wins and losses didn't come. There was a little rift in the locker room the last couple of years also, and it just kind of all went away. Now it's time to get the salary cap back down because at the start of this league year, they were going to be well over the salary cap. So they had to start cutting guys and really basically bring this roster back down to the bare bones at least, and that's what you get with bare bones is 1-9, and that's where they are right now. That's why it happened so quickly, and that's what happens when you build in free agency. Those guys are big money guys, and they don't last forever, and we found out the hard way around here.
Yeah, Bortles is nothing to brag about, but he was serviceable. He managed that team, I thought, very well that season. And Fournette and company. I mean, what an explosive offense. I just speculated with our viewers up here in the north about that team. What happened to that Jaguars team?
Well, let's get back on the offensive side. As you mentioned there, Blake Bortles was a first-round draft pick, and they, after that season, actually doubled down on him and paid him a second contract, which was quite controversial around here, and he did not perform up to that level after that. Now, that 2017 season, he wasn't great early in the year. There were some question marks with him early in that season, but he had a great stretch run. The last 4, 5, 6 games of the season when they were making the playoff push, Blake was playing out of his mind that year. And, of course, Leonard Fournette was a rookie that year and had those fresh legs and the energy, and they were running the football so effectively in that season. And then it just went away after that. And things just kind of started to change. Bortles wasn't effective anymore. They decided to make the move to Foles. That didn't work out. And then Fournette, they decided to cut bait on him this offseason. So same thing on offense, just not as many free agents on that side of the ball in 2017. But just after that season, they weren't the same anymore. Blake didn't live up to that contract, and Leonard Fournette really didn't either.
Now let's get to this season. I mean, you start off with a win against a good Indianapolis team, 27-20, and the loss to Tennessee the very next week, your own divisional competition, 33-30. You're right there, and after 9 losses in a row, starting with that Tennessee game.
Yeah, the week 1 game, Phillip Rivers threw the Jags defense a couple of balls that probably shouldn't have been thrown. They took advantage, to the Jags' credit, and won that football game in week 1. And as you mentioned, week 2, the Jags were down in Nashville pretty big in that game, rallied back, and tied the game in the fourth quarter, 30-30. The Titans hit a late field goal to win that game, and it's been all downhill ever since. Gardner Minshew has not played effectively since then, and he was battling through a thumb injury on his throwing hand for a few weeks and apparently didn't tell team officials about it. That's why his play was not so good, and nobody could really figure out why it went downhill so quickly. So then they had to go to another 6th-round pick from this year, Jake Luton at quarterback. And, he's looked okay the first couple weeks, but last week he threw 4 interceptions against Pittsburgh. So that's really been the bulk of it. And there's so many injuries piling up on defense now that the guys they did have to start the year left over from those teams we talked about A lot of those guys are not available now, and you're throwing a lot of rookies and guys who don't have a lot of experience in the NFL out there on defense, and that's what you get. And it's not just losses, Bruce. It's big losses now. There was a 9-game losing stretch in 2016 here where the average loss was about 8.5 points. The average loss now is about 15.5 points. So things are getting worse around here, and that's a big reason why.
Have they lost the fan base?
I'll say the fan base is ready for changes. I think that's a fair way to say it. I think they're tired of having a losing product year after year after year, especially with that 2017 season. We saw firsthand that it can be done around here if you have the right pieces in place. But the problem is the right pieces have not stayed in place around here, right? And there's a history around here, Bruce, of first-round draft picks. That's how you build organizations, right? Your building blocks of your team, your culture in your locker room. There's about a decade and a half, 15 years or so, where most of the first-round picks did not sign second contracts here for whatever reason, whether they're traded or moved on or went to free agency or were cut. And there's really no foundation of who the Jaguars are in the locker room, and that goes to the fan base too. They see that. I think it's that time where people are fed up again, and you can just kind of smell some changes on the horizon coming up.
Are you surprised Marrone hasn't been let go already, or are they just playing out this season saying, what's the point of firing him now?
Yeah, I think that's a valid point on the head coach because what Bill Parcells said, hey, I'd like to shop for some of the groceries too if I'm going to cook the meal. Well, Doug cooks the meal. He's not one shopping for the groceries, right? The roster's not great right now. It's young, it's inexperienced, and then it's banged up on top of that. There's only so much that Marrone, I think, can do to get this team going. And they're playing hard. That's the thing about them. They might be losing. They might be losing big at times, the end result. But they're in some of these games. They're not just laying down and letting teams roll all over them 50 to 10. I mean, they're in these games. They're fighting hard. And I think that speaks to the head coach and what Doug has been able to do around here. But the roster's just not great. So, yeah, now I don't think would be the right time. It's, hey, why now? What's going to change now if you make a change on this football team in 2020? But, hey, you got to win. Wins and losses matter in the NFL, and there aren't enough wins around here.
Am I reading between the lines with your last response, JP, that he may survive after this season?
Now, it's tough to say because now you got to remember, too, the ownership around here, the Khan family, fantastic owners, but they've only been in the league since 2012. So there's not a track record of, hey, this happened and we're going to handle it this way every time. It's only been a couple of situations where they've had to make moves around here. So you don't really have an idea of what's going to happen. And I will say, though, it feels like there's going to be a full clean out here. And I know there's still games to play, and I know the guys are working hard, and the coaching staff and all that's doing their thing. But there's a chance. It's a very small chance, I think, that everybody survives.
With the draft, am I out of line thinking that you would have to be zooming in on a quarterback? Obviously, the Jets are rumored to really want Lawrence for obvious reasons. If he falls for some reason or a trade takes place, is that the target, a top-flight quarterback, JP?
It has to be, Bruce. I mean, there's no way you can start building the blocks of your organization like we just talked about without a quarterback. That's the one that really starts it. Then you get somebody to affect the quarterback, which they've tried and they haven't been able to do on the defensive line. Then you get people to protect the quarterback, and they've had limited success in that realm. But it starts with a quarterback. And they've the last 2 years started 6th-round draft picks. Gardner Minshew was not supposed to play last year. Nick Foles got hurt. He comes in, and he has a shot this year to be the guy. It hasn't worked out yet because of injury, at least. And now Luton's in there. He's proven now, at least with a 4-interception game, that things can go awry in a hurry. There's a feeling neither one of those guys are the future franchise quarterback, at least now going into Week 12, in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinion around here. So it has to be a quarterback, whether it's first or second or wherever they end up in the draft. If they find some wins down the stretch, I think they're going quarterback first. Because they have to. They've only had in team history, Bruce, 26 seasons. 3 first-round draft pick quarterbacks in this entire franchise's history. You go back to Byron Leftwich. That's one of them.
Right.
Blaine Gabbert. Neither one of those guys truly worked out. Leftwich had limited success. And then Blake Bortles, who had 1 year, one run, and got a second contract. It didn't work out. You have to get that franchise-based piece, and it starts at quarterback this year for the Jags. There's no doubt in my mind.
You already touched on this earlier. You said that the players are still playing hard, so you don't see any signs of tanking because of looking ahead to the future.
No, because we talk about this all the time down here on radio in Jacksonville. It's a popular topic, let's say that. Because if you tank, you won't have a job. Because basically, if you're putting all this bad stuff on tape and a new GM or whoever is in here sees that, then you'll be out with the other staff and everybody that's gone as well, because they're trying to build a culture of accountability and playing hard. So it's a young group now. It is the youngest roster in the NFL. So, I mean, they might not know any better anyway, right? I mean, they haven't been around this enough to realize, oh, wait a minute. So they're playing hard because that's what they do. That's what they've been. That's what they were in college, and that's what they are now. So that's a good sign, and I really don't see that waning. They might just not be good enough. And, that's just part of the deal. That doesn't mean you can't go play hard and try and do the best you can. And you see that in the effort. And James Robinson right there, rookie running back, and some of these other guys that go out and are playing and performing well. I think that's proof that there's no such thing as tanking around here, at least.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about Robinson. He's one of the few bright spots for the team. Miles Jack on defense as well.
Yeah, James Robinson was a steal, right? An undrafted player out of Illinois State. Had a huge career at that school, and then just kind of flew under the radar on the pre-draft process. He didn't have a great combine, and then COVID-19 happened. So he didn't get to run again at the pro day. There was only, I think, the 49ers were looking at him after the draft, so the Jaguars picked him up, and he's been fantastic. Good enough to send Leonard Fournette packing. They cut Leonard, and of course he later got picked up by Tampa Bay. So they liked enough during the training camp period this year, the limited time they saw him on the field, because they didn't have an offseason program, to say, hey, this is our guy. We like what we see. Take away the names and the numbers on the back of the jersey. And he's proven it. I mean, you look at the numbers here, 172 carries, right? That's fourth most in the league. Only 11 of those carries, Bruce, are for negative yardage. The guy doesn't get hit in the backfield. If he does, he gets out of it, fights back for no gain or a minimal gain. He's always going forward. He's decisive. He follows the blocking. That helps the offensive line as well. And he's been fantastic. If it wasn't for him, now I know they're 1-9. Trust me, Bruce, I get it. But if it wasn't for him, I don't know where this Jags team would be right now. He's a guy you can build around for the future.
Right. What is the game plan? Run with him, try to eat up clock against our Browns, who are gaining more and more confidence from week to week under our first-year coach Stefanski?
Well, I was going to say, if the Jags are running the clock and the Browns are running the clock, it might be the fastest game in the league this year, right? I mean, who knows? Now, the question here is, who will be the quarterback this week? Jake Luton threw 4 picks. That's the most of any quarterback in a single game this year in the NFL. How's his mindset? How's Gardner Minshew's thumb? I don't think they want to put Mike Glennon out there unless they just have to. So who's the quarterback going to be? I think we'll tell you a lot about that, but they do lean on James Robinson. Unfortunately, though, they've been behind so much later, they've had to abandon a lot of the running game. So Robinson's doing that stuff trailing in a lot of games late, which is pretty remarkable. And you mentioned Jack earlier. I failed to mention Miles there on the defensive side. He's been around here. He's on a second contract now. They moved him to weak side linebacker and gave him some more space outside when they signed Joe Schobert in free agency, a former Brown, to play the middle linebacker spot. So Miles has really, really been good on the outside this year. When he's been healthy, he had an ankle issue early in the year, but he is the best player on defense. And there are moments this year where he's playing at a Pro Bowl type level. Unfortunately, he won't get the recognition.
How is Schobert playing?
Pretty well. He's pretty high in tackles so far. He manages things very well on the defense. Everybody's in the right spot most of the time. Even though they're young guys, it's kind of hard to wrangle a lot of those guys from time to time. But he's been a great addition here in Jacksonville. Got paid well to come down here. He's great in the locker room. And, yes, he's been a really nice addition to this Jaguars team for sure.
Speaking of COVID, what is your governor? Are we going to see – this is a home game for you. Are we going to see fans in the stands?
Yeah, we've had fans in the stands all season long, 25% at least. So the capacity of around 17,000 and change or so at TIAA Bank Field on Sunday. And, of course, this is where the Florida-Georgia game is played every year, the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. It wasn't as large this year in the stadium, but it was about the same capacity, about 18,000. Socially distanced, the parking's not an issue, and the weather should be nice. So it's actually okay. I went to the Florida-Georgia game as a fan, and there's plenty of space. You're not on top of each other, and it moved pretty well. And I like the fact that we have the ability to have fans down here. For sure.
I want to ask you a little bit about college before I let you go, JP. But who in your division is going to win it, Indianapolis or Tennessee?
Oh, let's see. I mean, if Phillip Rivers figures it out consistently down the stretch, I think Indy's the better team. Now, if it gets to a situation later in the year where some bad weather games and Tennessee can run the football and do all that, then the Titans might show their muscle down the stretch. So you asked me, you put me on the spot. It's a 50-50 shot. So give me Indianapolis right now. I think Rivers is the salty vet who figures it out down the stretch, and they pick up the division title.
Yeah, those Titans shocked everybody last year going into Baltimore and knocking them off. Let me shift to college. How good are the Gators? They've got the inside track now to represent the East in the SEC against Bama, I presume.
Yeah, they're good. I don't know if they're Alabama good. Now, I don't know if you see the set behind me. There's a lot of Alabama memorabilia back here because that's my alma mater. But I have seen Florida in person a good bit for Touchdown Radio Network this year. I had them a couple weeks ago against Arkansas, where Kyle Trask threw 6 touchdown passes, 5 in the first half. And then I've got them this week against Kentucky, a team that is not playing very well this year and runs the ball a good bit. So I expect Trask to have another big day at the office this Saturday at the Swamp. They're pretty good. They're really good on offense. They can outscore most anybody in college football this year. It will come down to that game in Atlanta. If both can handle their business down the next couple weeks here, it will come down to that game. And I think the Heisman comes down to that game as well between him and Mac Jones at Alabama.
We got a guy up here who was right in the hunt until this last game against Indiana. I don't know how much that's going to hurt Fields, but we shall see. I have to ask you about Florida State. I mean, I interviewed Bobby Bowden many times in my career, JP, what he did in his career there, and my goodness, what in heaven's name. Those poor alums have got to be going insane with that program.
I'll tell you, I know a bunch of alums and boosters and folks close to the program, and it is not a fun conversation when it comes to the Noles right now. They've done everything they can, and they thought, to get the right guy in there, and they I think, still feel that way in general because they have to feel that way for a while. They've spent so much money in buyouts and such down the stretch here that this is what they're having to deal with now. It has just been a rough year overall with the COVID-19 issues there. Players not playing well or opting out or whatever the case may be. And then on the field, just getting outplayed by teams they shouldn't be outplayed by. I had to call the Georgia Tech game this year. It was the week 1 game, the first game in the ACC this season in Tallahassee. And they let a freshman quarterback hang around in that game for Georgia Tech, who had never taken a snap in college football in his life, against that Florida State defense, who had all these players back. I think the majority, 10 starters were back, and they couldn't finish the job. And that was a real sign of maybe things to come, and it's lived up to that. It has been an awful year in Tallahassee. It's a prideful program, prideful fan base, but they're wearing it right now because the Gators are hot. Other teams in Florida are really hot. A lot of other SEC teams are good too. And they're not even close.
Right.
And it might be a little while, Bruce.
Yeah, that's a shame, really, when you think about it. JP, can't thank you enough. And, I'd like to have you on again maybe when we approach the decision-making process. Florida, of course, again, as we said, is probably going to play Alabama for the SEC crown. So keep it in the back of your mind if you can make us available.
I'm always available for you, Bruce, and it's a pleasure to be with you today. We appreciate it.
I'm going to come down and play golf with you maybe in the off season too.
I don't know about that. You might hit it better than I do, but come on down. We got good weather.
Thanks again, JP. Appreciate it.
Okay, Bruce.
All right, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, another edition of Fair or Foul.